Hey, Prolific community. Welcome back to the Prolific Hub podcast, a digital archive of all things life and the pursuit of creative entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Aaliyah Cheyenne. This podcast celebrates all of the change makers, way makers, and world builders who are charting their own paths and inspiring others to do the same. We highlight creatives, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and also discuss everyday life topics. If you've already rated and written a review for the podcast, thank you. If you haven't had a chance to just yet, it's never too late. Reviews help tremendously in the podcasting world, so I appreciate you taking the time to leave one. The best way to discover new podcasts is by word of mouth, so keep sharing the Prolific Hub podcast with your tribe. Be sure to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you'd like to show even more support, text the show, send in a voice note, or consider a monthly subscription. See the show notes below for more details. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Hi, friend. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Aaliyah Cheyenne, and I'm so excited to jump into a solo episode today. And I wanted to share some business updates. And starting out with, I am so excited that I have updated and restructured my website. So if you haven't had a chance to just yet, head on over to aaliyahcheyenne.com, and that link is in the show notes so you can easily click it. But I'm so excited that I've just updated it a little bit. I used to have everything just kind of built out on the home page, which just felt long and overwhelming. So now everything is segmented, including an offerings page, because my books are open again and I am looking to bring on new clients. So if you are someone who is interested in revamping your brand, talking through your communications strategy, or maybe you're someone who's looking to pursue more authenticity in your business practices and just show up as your full and authentic self, I'm your girl and I'm excited to talk to you about. So I now finally have a services page up where you can see more and book a free consultation with me to talk through anything you might be interested in and see if we're the right fit for each other and if we can move forward. I've also broken out other pages now. So there's a specific area that just kind of leads back to the podcast website, which is exciting. There's also an offerings page where you can easily access my journal and some of the other creative projects I'm working on that will be coming online in the very near future. So I'm excited about that revamp. Honestly, long overdue. I've had the domain for a really long time. I've had multiple iterations of my website before I even publish it to the public. And now I actually have a version that's like out in the world that I feel really proud of and excited about. So yeah, check it out and let's work together. I'm excited about that. Let's actually take a moment to talk a little bit about the domain. So domain is not something that's hard to get or not something that's necessarily very expensive to get. In some instances, if you are purchasing a domain for a shorter period of time, maybe you want to have the domain for a year or 2 years or 3 years, there are some sites that allow you to do that versus purchasing it for life or paying continually for that domain for life over a long period of time. And I think it's something that's important to think about in terms of what you want that domain to be long term, because you don't want to be in a position where you lock yourself into one that is not really as versatile as you want it to be or doesn't fully encompass all of the things about your business or your work that you want it to be. A lot of people will honestly go with some combination of their name or the sort of brand that they've built around their identity. So if they go by something else, maybe an alias that might be part of their domain, but a lot of people use a combination of maybe their first name and their last name, or something around their middle name, or something around their first name and their middle name. If it's a business that's really centered around maybe coaching, consulting, digital products around that nature. For other folks who have like actual maybe physical products that they're selling, or maybe their brand encompasses a number of different things, they might opt to use a different of name or a different type of domain for their business. So it all depends. I definitely jumped on a domain early in my process. Fortunately, it's still one that I like and still one that I use for my website. It's also a domain that I've secured for business email address associated with my website, but also a business email address that I used for this podcast. And that's not always a requirement. There are plenty of businesses, like maybe the first part of their domain that's associated with their work email is the name of the business at gmail.com. It varies. Some people feel like it's more professional to have a business email address domain that aligns with maybe your website or something else of that nature. But it really just depends on what you like, what you want, and what works for you. In most cases, the domain for a business email address, if it's maybe just you or a small team, can be relatively affordable depending on your budget month to month. But if, it's a big organization, then you're talking about maybe corporate level or enterprise level email addresses for a large number of employees is something that's totally different. But again, it depends on what the budget is and what makes the most sense and what's the most feasible for you right now at this stage in your business. So that's something to think of. I would also offer that looking into the trademarking process for your business could be of value depending on what it is you do and what your offerings are as a means to just protect yourself, your ideas, your intellectual property, like all of those things. Like looking into trademarking may or may not be really important. So that's also something to consider and to think about as you're moving forward with different elements and aspects of your business. So I actually watch several YouTube videos and things to learn things all the time, but I watched 2 recently that I really wanted to share. I'm going to definitely link them in the show notes below because I want you to check them out as well, especially if you're a new entrepreneur or maybe you're someone who's looking to pivot your business. Maybe you're someone who's just looking for inspiration and encouragement and a learning resource. So one of them is by Modern Millie, like that's her brand name and everything. And she shared a super informative and just like uplifting deep dive on just the top sort of creators in the industry and like all kinds of creators, like YouTubers, people who have businesses or don't outside of YouTube, like influencers. Like we're living in a time where unfortunately a lot of people are being, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of people are being shaped by the content they're seeing online. A lot of people are striving to what they're seeing these like YouTubers and influencers and other creative people doing. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I also think there always needs to be a balance, right? Because there are a number of ways to create a brand and create a business, and there are a number of career fields that exist. However, given the times and the nature of everything, a lot of people are influenced by those kind of folks. And what I really liked about this particular video that Modern Millie did is that she actually took the time to collect a whole lot of data and do this really solid spreadsheet broken down by a number of different variables to really look at the top earning content creators in the industry as of like 2023, 2024, something like that. And broke it down to the point where she can look and see the average number of length that these creators have been online, the average number of revenue that's, publicly available that they're earning, whether or not they have businesses outside of their content creation. If so, how many do they have? Because some of these folks are like, some of them, not all of them, are like serial entrepreneurs and they have multiple things going on, multiple streams of income, and a number of other factors. And the video was just top tier in terms of the quality, like the production quality, the filming quality, the information, the data, the fact that it was like attention grabbing. Like we live in a society right now where our attention spans are dwindling, especially when it's things that we're not interested in. I firmly believe that if it's things that we're interested in, we will sit through it because we are interested. But there's a lot of things that we're not interested in. And because of platforms and apps like TikTok and many others, tolerance and our patience for just like watching things through, it's gotten shorter. But I think her video did such a good job of being engaging and attention grabbing that, and it was so informative that I didn't want to click away. Like I wanted to see it through to the very end. And when I did get to the end, by then she had sold me. So I wanted to watch another video of hers because it was so informative and so impactful to me. And I think that she had done such a great job of that. And for folks who might be interested in like content creation, developing a personal brand, like I feel like this is a must watch. So again, I'll link that in the show notes. I highly encourage you to check it out. Another one I watched is a video by Michaela Witter, who's the founder of Ame Studio, all about me. And I like her vision for the brand that she's building. She would be someone I would call an influencer. She has a pretty large following on TikTok, but part of her brand is, well, all of her brand is really dedicated toward women, but part of it is for single women. And she created a card deck for like solo date ideas. And the card deck is just so beautifully done. Her marketing strategy for it, like in the video, I'll link it. She says in the video she doesn't really have an answer for exactly what she did because that wasn't like a strong point for her, but she realized that through just filming herself doing some of those solo date ideas and the fact that other people, hopping on and engaging with the product and using it, that helped to embolden and, amplify her marketing strategy. But I think for folks who might be interested in creating physical products, like maybe cards or other things like that, she did a great video on her YouTube channel about how she started her business. And this is like her second business. And it's just very straightforward. There's not a lot of fluff and fill. And I really liked that about her video as well. So I stayed interested and engaged and curious throughout that. And I think for folks who are just starting out, who are looking for more information about how to actually start an LLC, how to identify and work with a designer, how to learn more about, iterative process of creating the physical project that you want to create. I think her video was really good. So I'll link that in the show notes as well, because I think it's, worth watching. I think it's informative. She touches on everything from developing her logo, designing the cards, her overall vision for the studio, and it's full of like actionable steps that anyone can take if they're looking to start a business, particularly around, creating an actual product that you physically have in your hand and you sell and send to other people. I think that was a really good video. So I found it valuable. You might too, if that's an area that you're interested in. So I'll make sure that I link it in the show notes, and I think you should check it out. One thing I've learned in having a business, particularly around, this year and this time, like I'm 2 years into creating my LLC, pouring into it more actively now than I've ever been before. I'm doing more things right now than I was doing in the beginning. I might have started it because I was taking on consulting jobs like as an individual, and I wanted to actually have like an entity that I could do that through. So legally setting that up made the most sense to me. There are so many ways that you can set it up. You can literally do it yourself if you want to spend the time and the energy to just quickly learn how to register it and do it on your own. Some folks prefer others to do it for them, and they're willing to pay that. That's something I did. Like some people use brands like Taylor Brands or LegalZoom or like these other platforms that will do that stuff for you for a fee. And I use LegalZoom to set mine up because I wanted to make sure everything was done right. All the paperwork was done right. All that stuff was taken care of and done. So I paid what I needed to pay. I did what I needed to do, and I let it be set up that way. And there are some folks who do that directly themselves. Some folks like Michaela Witter, that YouTube video that I was just telling you about, she mentioned in her video that she has a CPA. She sent the fee and whatever information the CPA needed, and the CPA did it on her behalf. Everyone's different. This is just coming to me to say, but one thing I've noticed and I read about a lot, I've seen a lot in interviews, and it just keeps coming up over and over again, is that a lot of entrepreneurs, some of the most successful entrepreneurs, they're not always successful because they're the smartest person or they have the best strategy, but they're good at identifying tasks to delegate elsewhere, and they're great at identifying tasks to outsource. So when you have the resources to do so, that's one thing. It's totally different if you're in a different position and you're having to, figure stuff out on your own as best you can until you get to a point where you can afford to bring on more help and more support. But I think that's something to keep in mind. If there are some tasks, even in setting it up, that you have the means to outsource to a reputable person or brand, do it. If not, spend a little bit of extra time to figure out how to do that yourself directly. It's certainly worth looking into. I will say on the other side of that, having a business will amplify certain habits, particularly around money. It might also exacerbate certain issues. So if you are not great at handling money in your personal life, having a business and handling money for your business will quickly expose whether or not you're good with money, child. Let me just say. So that is something to think about. I feel like getting your money right as an individual can be hard if you are not actively employing good money habits and practices. And a lot of that boils down to financial literacy. Not everyone has access to tools for financial literacy. Some people do, whether that be through books, whether that be through YouTube, whether that be through learning from relatives. Some people, depends on what relative you learn from, child. Because if you learn from a relative that's good with money, that's one thing. But if you're learning from a relative who's not, that's something completely different. It might be easy to think that anyone and everyone has access to YouTube. Not anyone and everyone has access to YouTube. There are a lot of people who don't have access to internet. Okay. So everyone's financial literacy is different, but if you're in a position where you do have access to learn more about becoming more financially literate, whether that be through reading books, whether that be through listening to audiobooks, whether that be through listening to maybe podcasts about financial literacy and money management, whether that mean you have the resources to hire an accountant because you're moving that much money through your business that you need that extra hand and that extra support from a trusted CPA or trusted accountant or trusted money manager, financial advisor, whatever the case may be, like it's very important to get your ducks in a row and get that stuff in order. So even though I established like my LLC, my consulting business in 2022, I wasn't always moving funds through that business. There were times where after the business, I might have taken on a contract, but I still did it as an individual. I didn't necessarily do it through my business. And that's largely because I hadn't set up some of the systems that you actually need to move money properly through a business, even as basic as a business checking account and a business credit card, things like that. So now I'm in a season where those things are finally set up, and I'm building my business credit history, which is different from your personal credit history. And I am now moving certain recurring expenses from my business through the business credit card or through the business checking account, making sure that if I am taking on new contracts, I am signing these contracts as business and through my business instead of an individual, because obviously there are different tax advantages or implications when it comes to tax time. Doing a better job of honestly keeping track of receipts for everything. I was not doing that, if I'm being very honest. So I actually went through a huge period this year where I did some backtracking and like actually went through all of my expenses using a tool. Of course, you can use something like QuickBooks. You can use platforms like Wave, LegalZoom. Like with the tax plan I have, there's actually like an LZ Books feature, so I can sync cards to it and pull transactions that way and pair them with receipts and everything, so that when tax time does come, I already have those things tracked and in place and categorized so that it's a lot easier. I think doing those things and getting on top of those things is actually really important. The earlier, the better. I wish it's something I would have done earlier and sooner in my process of forming, but this has been a learning process for me. I'm learning a lot from other entrepreneurs in my life, in my actual life. I'm learning a lot from entrepreneurs, whether through YouTube or online or other platforms. Initiating these best practices early and getting certain systems in place early will only make for a smoother process down the line. And I think that's also really important. Also, setting aside money for like tax purposes too. Like, I was advised early on, like, whenever you take on certain contracts, like, make sure you're setting aside, you know, 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever the case may be, for tax purposes during tax season. And that is important, child, because you don't want to use and spend up all that money and then be hit with a tax bill that is just shocking during tax season. And that is something I'm keeping in mind as well, like how I'm bucketing for business expenses, for tax purposes, to pay myself. I'm not in a position yet in my business where I can pay myself like a consistent bi-weekly or weekly salary per se, but I can draw down funds from my checking account when I need them to pay myself like the right way, to withdraw that money like in lump sums. And something that I'll be doing for now until I get to a place where I can consistently, like, pay myself on a consistent, regularly scheduled basis. So keeping that in mind is important as well. And also making sure that I have that account available so that as I'm pursuing grant funding for creators and creatives, as I'm pursuing grant funding for small businesses, for women entrepreneurs, etc., like, if and when, or I mean, I say if, when I am selected for a grant, I have somewhere to actually deposit that for the business versus just putting that into a personal account, because that wouldn't be right. So establishing that is really important, and being able to have a place that's solely dedicated to business expenses makes it a lot cleaner, because I was doing it a messy and complicated way before, where I was actually having to sort through what was a business expense versus what was a personal expense based on the card I was using. And now it's just much simpler and much cleaner because I have cards and accounts that are solely dedicated to business expenses, which just makes the process a lot more smooth for me. I'm still very early in the game. I'm still learning so much. I can only continue to grow and get smarter and wiser and stronger from here. And I look forward to continuing to do that, to continuing to evolve and to pivot and to learn everything that I need to learn to do what I need to do. So I'm taking it one step at a time. I'm learning. I love sharing what I've learned to some folks who may be listening. Maybe this is information you've heard before that you know already, that is obvious to you. However, to some folks who are listening, maybe this is new information or something that you haven't thought about before. So I offer that as something to think about and to encourage you to make your business practices as simple and straightforward and clean and organized as you possibly can, because it will only make money matters and money management easier for you down the line. Some of the things I create, I will not be creating like through my business. Like, my business is mainly for consulting purposes, like contracting with individuals and organizations, other entities. And then there are other things that I create that are just created by me as an individual. Like, my journals that I created in 2022 is not through my business. Like, that's through me as an individual. Like, I self-publish that as myself. And there are some other things that I want to create like that will be in a similar fashion. Like, I won't be doing them through my LLC. So I think it's just important to be clear about what things you create are being funneled through what, and what makes the most sense financially, brand wise, whatever the case may be, to just think those offerings through and how you are moving those projects through business, your brand, or anything else. I would love to get to a place where I can create some merch for the podcast, because I think that would be really, really fun. I'm imagining some fun t-shirts, maybe some mugs, maybe hoodies, like other things like that. And if I ever did get to a place where I was doing that regularly, something that you need to have to sell products like that through a business is a certificate of authority. So that's something that I made sure I got this year, so that if and when that comes to be, I can be sure to make sure I'm set up properly and doing everything legally and the right way. With that, usually you're, required to check in quarterly, kind of, at least in the state of New York, check in quarterly to just report any sales for sales tax purposes. And even if you don't sell anything, you still have to check in. And even if you're just reporting zero, just so you're keeping track of that and staying on top of that, because the last thing you want is to be hit with like a sales tax bill for your state. And that's not something you stay on top of. So something to think about. But for things like maybe potentially doing merch for this podcast, like I would need a certificate of authority in order to sell those things. So something to keep in mind, just something that I'm making sure I'm prepared for. If and when I decide to move forward with that, I can without issues. And if I don't, I'll still have it and I'll still be good either way. So keeping little things like that in mind is important. So with that, I will say that this episode was more about sharing some resources that I found valuable, that if you are looking to start a business or a brand, whether that be certain products you want to bring online and getting started in that way, or maybe you're thinking about content in some capacity, I wanted to share that Modern Millie video that's linked in the show notes, as well as the Michaela Witter video that's linked in the show notes as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I'm bettering my practices around money management for my business, and also share just that my website is revamped and my books are open. So if you're looking to connect in that capacity, head on over to aaliyahcheyenne.com, book a free consultation with me so that we can get started working together. If you are tuning into this podcast and you are a business owner, or maybe you're someone who is looking to start a business as a creative entrepreneur or any other kind of entrepreneur, I would love to know what are some money best practices that you've employed in your business or that you're thinking about employing when you start your business. Feel free to text the show and let me know, or feel free to send in a voice note. You can find a link to do both in the show notes below. So let me know. If you have any feedback about what you heard, feel free to share it in a text or voice note, or to leave a positive review for the show, 5 stars and a written review. Thank you so much in advance. If you liked this episode or any of the episodes that you've heard so far, let me know. I would love to connect with you and hear more about what's resonating with you. Next week, we'll be speaking with Michelle Thames, who is a digital marketing strategist and coach, to talk all things marketing, all things brand identity, her business, and her podcast, Social Media Decoded. And I'm so excited for that conversation. So if you're interested in learning more about how to market your business and learning more about marketing in general, I highly suggest that you tune into that episode, and I will catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And I'm so excited that decided to spend this time with me, and I am grateful for that, and I'm grateful for you. So thank you for that, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye. Hey friend, if you made it this far, you're a rock star. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. The Prolific Hub podcast is hosted and produced by me, Aaliyah Cheyenne. If this episode resonated with you, please leave a 5-star rating and positive written review. Reviews help tremendously in the podcasting world, so I appreciate you taking the time to leave one. Be sure to share this episode with a friend and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the Prolific Hub Pod on your favorite social media platforms to stay connected. Consider supporting the show with a monthly subscription, or send us your thoughts on this episode via text or voice note. Find all of the juicy details in the show notes below. Catch you on the next episode.